Father in heaven, we come before you this evening just thankful for our city officials and their willingness to serve our community in the capacity that you have called them, Lord. And so we pray this evening that you would give them wisdom in the decisions that they have to make, Lord. We pray that you would bless those decisions, Lord, and that they would be decisions that aren't only honoring to you, but that they would also be made out of a sense of equity and justice, Lord. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Just in case, everybody, we are starting a new system today, so bear with us. If the procedure doesn't go as well as it normally does, and my computer is down because Leo messed it up. And if we do mess up, it won't be our fault as councilmen, it'll be Dan Brennan's fault because he didn't teach us right. With that, we will open it's a public discussion. This is the time provided to the public to address the city council on items not on the agenda. If you desire to speak, please address Mr. Mayor, and upon being recognized, come forward to the podium and state your name and address before proceeding in your subject matter. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Roll call. I got carried away with my enforcement stuff.
Councilmember Daniel DeGraff.
Here.
Jake Parks.
Here.
Leo Zuber.
Here.
Vice Mayor Michael Verstucha.
Present.
Mayor Dean Euchre.
Here. Now, you may.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm Dan Levitt, representing the San Joaquin Regional Rail Commission, and we have had some changes on our commission. We're happy to have Representative Zuber as one of our new commissioners, and want to give you an update on the progress of the ACE Forward program to increase ACE service and expand ACE service, and hopefully most of you heard the very good news that when the transportation measure passed last week, that one of the key beneficiaries was the ACE Forward program. $400 million was allocated specifically to our program to expand ACE and to extend ACE down in South San Joaquin County and to Stanislaus and ultimately to Merced as well. In addition to the $400 million that was allocated to the ACE program, there was additional funding that didn't get as widely reported, $245 million a year towards the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, and another $250 million a year for the Congested Corridor Program that ACE will be able to compete for once we've expended the $400 million that we have been allocated. I did want to note that we haven't spoken to you for a while. We've been working very hard to complete our draft environmental document. It will be out to the public in mid-May, and we will have a 60-day review period. We're looking to have public meetings. I expect to have one in Modesto and one in the Tracy area, as well as 2 or 3 in the Bay Area as well. And in addition, we'd be happy to come and do presentations if you are interested. So we're happy to come and give you more background about the environmental document once it's out. The document itself, it is in the draft form, and it will not select a preferred alternative. We'll wait till after having public comment. But for the alignment down through Ripon and for the stations along this alignment, really we're pretty much down to a preferred alternative already. We've narrowed down to a single alignment alternative that utilizes the UP corridor just east of the existing track. And the station location, we've already one station location that we've been working with the city on for Ripon, and so we're very excited to move forward with that. I just wanted to note a couple other things, in particular that in addition to the extension down to Ripon, Modesto, and ultimately Merced, we're also now doing planning work to ultimately expand ACE and the San Joaquin service to Sacramento. And so that is also underway. And so ultimately someday, not only will you be able to go from Ripon to the San Joaquin, up the San Joaquin Valley and down to the Silicon Valley, but you'll also be able to go from Ripon to Sacramento as well. And I'd open if you have any questions.
When do you visualize it actually happening?
We are looking at the environmental document will be done within a year. We can start construction in a few years. The commitment to the administration and legislature was that the trains would be 2 series by 2023.
Awesome.
We're hoping to get it before then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? See none? Anybody else?
Did you miss a COG meeting or something? Is that how you got put on the record?
Thanks for taking that from me, Lee.
Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you for allowing me to speak today. I just wanted to let everyone know that Congressman Denham is having a joint town hall or government night on the 17th of April at Larsa Hall down in Denair, California. And he would really appreciate it if all of you guys came down and spoke your piece or had a question for him or something along those lines. Also, some of the supervisors from the county will be there, and the mayor, Gary Soyseth, one of your compadres, is going to be there as well. So thank you for your time. Any questions?
Denair?
Yeah.
It's in Denair. It's really in Turlock. It's legitimately like 5 feet from Turlock. But it's right on Monte Vista right there. But it's
Doors open at 5, it starts at 6, and floor is going to be there too, right?
exactly. Heath floor will be there as well, similar floor. Yeah.
Could you send us an email about that?
Sure,
So-
definitely. Definitely get that to you guys. I think I have your email already, so I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going.
Anybody else?
You going?
Seeing nobody, we will close the consent calendar.
No.
I mean, the public discussion. Okay. Moving on, is approval of the minutes. I didn't know I was there.
Yeah.
Leo, we're waiting for you.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
I did.
Apparently somebody did.
That passes a 5-0 vote.
Yeah, but what if we say one thing and punch something else? Then we're really going to look bad.
We're trying to figure out what we're doing.
One of the two.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'd like to pull 2 items from the consent calendar. Items 1.2D, 1.3F.
And I would like to pull 1.3H, I believe.
Okay, so do we want to vote on what?
Yeah.
Open
I'll make a
for vote.
motion that we approve the agenda as amended.
Second, hit vote.
Just a moment, let's slow it down.
And so we have to. You got a second.
Uh-oh,
What'd you do?
I'm not sure.
No.
Pass
We're
good.
with the
Okay.
5-0. Okay, we'll start off with 1.2D.
No.
No?
Now we approve the consent agenda as amended.
Okay.
This was where we got messed up.
Yeah. Now we do the,
Now we do the item.
no, now we do the consent agenda as amended, right? After we've approved the agenda? So you, all right, then I'll move that we approve and don't hit move this time.
Yeah,
I want to
let
hit
Leo
it,
do it.
okay?
Yeah.
Jiminy Christmas.
Do I hit vote?
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
Move it, second.
Might beat me to it. Okay. Finish the vote. Finalize.
Now we'll be moving on to
Please
Leo,
show on our screens.
1.2D.
Yeah, I just have one question about 1.2D. First, I gotta find it. Oh, here it is. What exactly is this company doing as part of this project?
So they're doing the traffic signal design, the signal layout, and the electrical street lighting design. So the electrical design, signal, intersection layout and design.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had. I hate paying bills and not knowing what I'm paying for.
1.3F.
And then 1.3F. Mr. Zuber?
One
Mr. Mayor,
point,
you need to vote on that item.
We can vote on these two and then we wait?
Nope.
Vote
You
on
gotta
them
eat
Gotta
individually.
vote on them individually.
Okay.
I'll move we approve 1.2D.
Okay, move it. I'll second it. Oh,
What's the person that says they're
Yeah.
moving it? Vote for it.
Somebody's got a hot trigger finger around.
that's Jake.
Oh,
That was me on that one.
Okay, moving on to the next.
I thought that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to.
But he moved it, so he should.
All right, Leo, Mr. Zuber, 1.3F.
1 point. Where's F?
1.3E.
no, 1.3F.
1.3F.
F.
1.2F.
I think I asked this one other time, but the contracted amount for this project is like 680,000. This payment shows that we're paying them 702,000. Where'd the other 20-something thousand dollars come from?
708.
Yeah, this was the original bid quantity for the asphalt rubber cape seal portion of it, and the slurry seal portion was extended. The quantities were extended by 10% and 5% when we went through the actual project. So they're above our original bid quantities by those amounts, and that's where that difference is.
So we award a bid based on what we think it's going to take in the way of materials, and if it takes more than in the agreement, we agree to pay for the extra?
Yeah, we extended those quantities out.
Okay.
If we get into considerable amounts, then it'd be a change order, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
Now we got
Okay, boys, now just
Okay, who's going to
calm
move?
down. I'll move that we approve 1.3F.
second.
The second's a fast trigger.
And now moving on,
You're a technology guy. You should
Mr.
be
DeGraff,
faster than that.
1.3H.
I'm just letting the mover move.
Yeah, so I have a statement here. Before we proceed on this matter, I'd like to announce for the record that I have declared a conflict of interest in this matter because the matter involves my current employer. So consequently, I won't hear this matter or participate in the council's deliberations or decisions related to this matter. And I'll,
Check out.
yeah, I need to check out,
Close out.
leave, and leave my forms of communication in the room here, so.
Don't stay long.
Remind me
Have a
when
good
you guys
evening.
are done, so I don't,
We'll see you next meeting.
Okay, we need a first and second.
We have a first and second.
Move.
Move to approve. Oh, and then Mike.
Need a second.
Now discussion if you have any.
We don't need no discussion. Okay, that passes with a 4-0 vote, and Mr. DeGraff can be
Good.
welcome
Good
back.
showing.
Didn't even have a chance to sit down, did you?
Are we gonna do the proclamation presentation now, or is somebody here from the, is this the women's shelter? Nobody's here, so we'll just pass on the speech and
Just tell
we'll
them what you got.
present it to them. We have we're making this April the Assault Awareness Month, and we're doing a proclamation for that, so since nobody's here to accept it, there's no reason going through the whole procedure. From there, we'll move on to miscellaneous items. This ordinance adopts chapter 16.146 of the Ripon Municipal Code entitled Cargo Container Storage Container and Construction Dumpsters. I believe this is Mr. Zinhart.
Okay.
This is actually the first reading and introduction of the ordinance that you guys voted on. I think it was at the February meeting for introducing an ordinance to monitor.
Oh, wait.
Wait.
Sorry, I skipped
Mike,
one.
wait a second here now. We're on
This
public
one-
hearings.
This was a consent item, so this is, public hearing goes first.
Keep going.
Yeah, you're on
yeah, we're still on 2.
Excuse me.
2A.
Sorry, kid. No wonder I caught you sleeping over there. Okay, so this is a public hearing to approve the resolution adopting Ripon's Consolidated Fire Protection District's update of fire facilities inspection impact fee study dated March 10th, 2017. And is it still you?
Well, I guess. Dennis was actually supposed to be here this evening, so I just texted him to see where he was at. Pursuant to the Ripon Municipal Code, which is actually what gives the authority of the fire district to collect development fees, is why this is on the agenda tonight. The fire district actually just went through a process with Goodwin and Associates where they reviewed their fees, and they did update them. I didn't go fully through the report, however, they did have a slight increase in their fees. It wasn't really much to speak of, really. But we do have to adopt a resolution so they can enact those new fees. So that's what this item is tonight, and I don't know much else about it, but Dennis does. So,
Mike has what to speak on that.
Yeah, Dennis was supposed to be here tonight, but something came up. What I want to tell you is, though, is I did talk to him Saturday night about this to make sure he was okay with it. And since he helped put the numbers together, he's very pleased if we accept it.
Seeing nobody else, do we need a motion?
I'll
on
make a
this?
motion.
Well, I have one point of clarification, too. This fee only applies to construction within the city limits, correct?
That is correct.
So somebody who builds something in the county.
it's fire fees within the city of Ripon city limits.
Right. Okay.
So, but that's a good question. So what they're going to do is, if we approve it because it makes sense, he's now going to take it to the county and try to see if the county will approve it for the county area. So I'll move if you give me the vote thing here.
Mr. Mayor, this is a public hearing?
No, we have public hearing. So you got to open it
No.
up to the public before we.
Yeah,
have
it's
a-
public hearing.
Yeah.
Anybody from the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing no one, we'll close the public
Got a line.
hearing and call for approval first, second. Anybody?
I can't.
Cancel.
Mine says cancel.
Mine says
So
canceled
they
as
either
well.
have to reset it, or we'll just do a voice vote.
I move to accept.
I'll second.
All vote.
All in favor.
Wait, are we doing?
What are we doing?
Okay, it's
Start
up
over?
now.
Okay, yeah, so
It's up.
Okay, we got it.
It's here.
there we go.
And that passes with a 5-0 vote.
Yep.
Okay. Moving on to ordinances. 3A, this ordinance amends Title 16, Chapters 16.12, 16.20, 16.24, and 16.26 to allow for drive-through services and parameters of that such in the neighborhood commercial C district. C1 district. Mr. Zinahart.
Thank you. This is the first reading introduction. We actually reviewed this last month. We went through the parameters of the drive-throughs in the C1, so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
Any
I do.
speakers? Let's see,
My
no
speaker
speakers.
thing didn't work.
Well, will now.
Yep, there you go.
Okay.
Mr. Zuber,
I just have one, in reading the thing, I looked at your tables. MU is multiple use,
Mixed use?
mixed use. What is M1 and M2? Because there's a lot of stuff in there, and I don't know what those are.
M1 is light industrial and M2 is heavy industrial.
Okay. That's it. I just didn't know what they were.
that's first reading introduction, so we need to,
Mr. Mayor, okay, so do I need to make a comment? I want to waive the first reading and introduce?
You can, or you can just hit it. I mean,
Okay, well, that's,
yeah.
okay, well, I voted, I moved.
Mr. Zuber.
I'm getting there.
Everybody did, okay.
Okay. Agenda, what happened?
4A.
Okay, moving on to discussion items. 4A, direct staff to bring back a resolution adopting the city's Ripon's Economic Development Incentive Program. Is that you, Kevin? Or
I'll
Mr.
take this one again.
Mr. Zeiderfart.
Told you I've got all the items tonight. So basically, what you have here in front of you, for some time now, you know, the city council has desired to increase the city's economic position by becoming more competitive with our surrounding communities. And as such, the council has taken several steps over the past couple of years to move towards that goal. In June of 2015, we adopted the North Point Specific Plan, which encompasses a 300-acre portion out here off of Jack Tone and Fulton Avenue, abutting up against the Missland Sports Park. We did also adopt a resolution that looked at reducing the interest that was accruing on benefit assessment fees. Actually, it provided an incentive to pay those fees and sooner than later, where we would waive all that interest that had accrued, with the hopes of once we did get some of that benefit assessment fees back in to the city coffers, then we could use that money to do more infrastructure, so we had more land that was readily available for economic development in the future. We also, upon request of the council, amended our development fees, where we went through and looked at mostly all the non-residential fees, and we did have a reduction in commercial fees of about 10%. We had a reduction in office fees of about 19%, and a reduction in light industrial of a little over 10%. And then also over the past couple of years, staff's been developing relationships with some of the commercial brokers in the area, so we're getting a little more regular contact with them. They are really the ones that are out pounding the pavement trying to find users for these properties, because they're the ones that are going to get a paycheck when they bring somebody to that. So getting those relationships developed and going to some of the conferences where we can actually talk with them a little bit more has helped quite a bit. So we have been seeing some interest in economic development through those relationship building. Another desire I think we heard from the council was to develop an economic development incentive program to further assist in attracting the private sector investment in sales tax producing developments in Ripon. With that in mind, there is an attachment to your staff report here. It's only like a 4-page item here, which is kind of our draft of the economic development incentive program that we're proposing. If the council desires, if they like what they see in there, then we could bring this back at the next meeting with a resolution for adoption. Basically, you guys didn't have that attachment?
It was in the agenda packet that I remember. His memo was, but I don't remember seeing anything else.
Does it start out as City of Ripon Economic Development
Yeah.
Incentive Program?
Yep. After you got it.
It's right after his memo, Leo.
Okay. I didn't see it until now. All right.
We don't have to take action on it.
Basically, I'll just kind of go through a few bullet points within the plan here. Some of it actually just gets into the nuts and bolts of how you would apply if you did qualify. The premise of the incentive program is to increase the city's economic position by incentivizing certain businesses by providing short-term financial assistance for long-term economic growth and vitality for the city of Ripon. So the incentive program has been established with some of the following goals in mind. Increase municipal revenues to support, obviously, city services, so we can provide services to our residents here in town and businesses. Minimize sales tax leakage by providing a broad cross-section and variety of retail uses. We do have quite a bit of sales tax leakage to our surrounding communities, so the goal would be to try to plug some of those gaps and get some of those businesses here in town. Also increase amenities that support a quality living environment for our residents here in town. Attract new regional development and support the initiation, development, and growth of new local businesses. In order to kind of qualify and to actually, there's some required findings we must make in order to be able to have a business qualify for an incentive program. And there in the report, basically, we have to have the findings that the net financial benefit to the public will exceed the value of the incentives provided, so it's not considered a gift of public funds. Another one is the new businesses will provide a direct public benefit through the generation of sales, property, or transient TOT tax, which hotels provide, or the incentives represent a partial return of revenues of fees that will be realized once the project is completed. And such that the incentives will not impact the city's current general fund balance, as the incentives will be based on future additional revenues to the general fund. We did try to put some thresholds within the incentive program, just because every business coming in, is not necessarily going to qualify for an incentive-based program. So we did, some of the thresholds was that the entity must be an entity that will engage in retail sales within the city of Ripon. Their point of sales must be the city of Ripon. They must not currently be located within the primary trade area of Ripon, so a company locating from one side of Ripon to the other is already producing sales tax for our community. And it must provide a benefit to the community, such as a unique business, increased sales to existing local businesses. So we would hope that a business coming in might actually use some of the other businesses in town for some of their services. Develop a greenfield site or other community benefits as may be identified by the council. Along with the thresholds or eligibility requirements, it cannot be a vehicle dealer or big box retailer. There is some state legislation that prohibits that, such that you cannot provide incentives for a big box retailer or a vehicle dealer. This does not actually apply to RV sales or boat sales or anything like that. It's strictly to automobile dealers. It's to try to keep cities from grabbing an auto dealer from another town next to them and providing them a benefit that's greater than what the other town did. So that stops a little bit of that. And then the last point there, it must generate a minimum of $35,000 in sales tax revenue or TOT tax revenue to the city annually to qualify. And we use 5 years of verification to verify that. So that's kind of the in a nutshell, the program that's being proposed here. The rest of it's just procedures of how to apply for a program. So at this point, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Speakers. Okay, Jake, Mr. Parks, first.
Thank you, Ken. On your eligibility and threshold requirements, do they have to meet all of those, or just one of them, or 3 out of 5, or 3 out of 6?
It must meet all of them, essentially.
Of them?
I mean, they obviously can't. I mean, number 5, we can't give an incentive to a dealer or something like that. We're looking at obviously businesses that would create more than $35,000 a year to the city. It has to be point of sales in Ripon. They must create retail sales tax, so they must meet all the requirements to be able to qualify.
And that's a hard 6. It's no exceptions whatsoever. Or if I guess what I'm just trying to get at is,
yeah. Go ahead. What's your thoughts on that?
So I guess what I'm just trying to get at is if they come in and meet, say, 3 out of the 6 or 4 out of the 6. I mean, obviously, number 5 is kind of thrown in there. So I just don't know. I don't know if it's going to be a case-by-case basis. We're going to look at it and go, well, they meet, 4 of them, and we really want them, so we're willing to kind of look the other way, or it's going to have to be one of those things where you go, no, it's this.
The way it's proposed is they would have to meet all of them. That's obviously up to the council to look at that. It's a policy decision of what you guys would like. I mean, it can be adjusted.
Okay, I just want to know, so that way when, businesses come in, they know it's like, look, it's a 6 and it's a hard 6, things like that. So, okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor Restuccio.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. But this is coming back, so there's a lot of things we can put in it. But I have a question because I didn't quite understand it. I probably should, but I don't. So I understand and see that on your economic development incentive program has been established with the following goals in mind. I understand the tax part of it, but the first part says increase municipal revenues to support city services. So when I see that, I'm thinking of continuing operating money from municipal side, not sales tax. What would that be? Give me a couple examples.
That basically is sales tax coming in, so increasing revenues.
Okay, but when you talk about below, local businesses, attract new regional development, increase amenities and things like that, to me, retail uses, that is all sales tax.
Right. We can reword that first one to be a little clearer if we need to.
Increase municipal revenue. So you're just saying anything and everything that comes in as revenue is the municipal revenue. Okay. Well, it looked to me when I read it as being different because the next one is minimize sales tax leakage, and the rest of it looks like increasing sales tax. So I wasn't sure if that was a different bucket.
It was meant to be any revenues coming into the city that would help us to provide services.
Mr. Zuber.
My question sort of builds off of what Mr. Parks brought up. Number 3 says they can't be currently located. Suppose we had a business in town that wanted a new location in town and was going to expand to the point that they could show that they were going to meet these requirements. Could we consider that?
That's up to the council if you like. I mean, that's something you can keep, put in here, such as, it was kind of what Jake was talking about, meeting all of them or some of them, majority of them, if they're meeting the thresholds of what they're producing for sales tax. It's up to the council if you want to include those in.
Well, my reason for asking the question is, for a long time, we've had the reputation sort of my way or the highway when it comes to commercial development. And I would hope that we would get to the point that we would be writing some of these things so that we started sending out the message that we're willing to talk, that there is no hard and fast. Well, there might be a floor someplace, but there's room to maneuver before we get there. That's all.
And that's a good point. I think we've made some positive leeway in that direction over the past couple of years with some of the stuff that's been done, but that might be a good thing to include in here as well.
Thank you.
Mr. DeGraff?
Yeah, I'm glad we're doing this. I think it's a good idea, and along the lines of what Leo was saying, another example that I think we could possibly consider is, say there's a business in an area that, particularly downtown Main Street, if it's maybe not suitable for that area, and we'd like to put them in, to the vet's office, for example, maybe be better. I know they've had interest in moving, rebuilding somewhere else.
They bought the building next door.
Well,
That's an example.
Yeah.
but as an example, if there's a business that you'd like to, maybe they're not suitable for the area that they're in, they'd like to move, we could maybe make it work by relocating them and provide incentive for them to do that, because there's other benefit than just a monetary benefit.
Right.
But I'm glad we're doing this. I think it's a good thing moving forward, and excited to work on it. So thanks.
Mr. Restuccio?
Yeah, I just want to say one last thing, and to support on what Leo said. If we have a business in town that will move and generate more revenue, if somebody comes in from out of town, we'll give them the incentive. We certainly should think about giving our own businesses already in town. So I want to hear you to hear from three people, just because I think that's important. So I'm glad Leo brought that up.
Do we need to open this up to the public? Nope. Just a discussion.
No, we are looking for some direction from council. I think I did hear loud and clear what you guys would like to see in there a little bit, and we'll work on some language also about maybe the relocation of businesses, if there's an opportunity for that to put in here. This would hopefully come back to you at this next meeting as a resolution for adoption, so at that point you can look through it a little bit more, and if there's, make sure we've addressed your concerns.
Hopefully we can try and provide more input too.
Okay, moving on. Residential growth accommodation and annexation policy. Direct staff to start the general plan amendment process and bring back the appropriate documents to facilitate the desired City of Ripon's growth accommodation and annexation policy. I imagine that's you too, Mr. Zyder.
Yes, I'll finish it off here. Again, we are just looking for some direction from the council on this item. At the last city council meeting, we did go through a presentation about Ripon's historical, present, and upcoming residential growth and their trends. Out of that discussion, staff was directed to bring back some growth policies for the city council to consider as our city further develops. Here tonight is a couple items that we think would address most of your concerns, and I think it's what we heard the city council wanting to move as we wanted to move forward. The first item here really is amending the general plan land use growth accommodation chapter of the City of Ripon's general plan. As you know, basically our general plan calls for a residential growth accommodation program to set the average annual residential growth rate within a range of 3 to 6%. So we went through that at the last meeting with the presentation. 3% puts us pretty much on target, slightly less than what the general plan 2040 calls for, our population of being 40,000 at 2040. A 3% would be about 32,000 at 2040, and a 6% growth rate would be about 68,000 at that time frame. So I did hear that council had some desires of looking at maybe ratcheting that down a little bit as far as the percentage, possibly even looking at more of just a hard cap of permits versus a percentage. So what staff is proposing would be to readjust the growth rate so that not more than 160 residential permits, building permits, get allocated in any given year, which currently represents about a 3% growth rate for our community. In order to avoid years with permit spiking, which I did hear is a concern of saving them up, and then all of a sudden one year we have like a 10% growth rate, staff is also proposing to only allocate 130 residential permits per year through development agreements, annexation agreements, or conditions of approval for projects. This would give us about a buffer of approximately 30 residential permits. So if by chance a development didn't use them in a certain year, they could actually reapply to get some of those permits back the next year if there was some still available. So there's like a 30 permit buffer there to cover that opportunity. So that's the first item here, and there is, as an attachment there, some general plan language that will need to be revised. In there's two sections. One's 2.4, it's a growth accommodation. The top section is how the general plan currently reads. There's an italicized section is text that we would add to the general plan, and we would also change one of our policies, which actually one of the policies talked about a 3 to 6% growth rate. We would change that to be the 160 permits, residential permits per year, if that's what council desired. The second item, it really deals with annexations. So we did have some discussion in the past, I think it was about a year ago or so, Kevin, if I'm not mistaken, about annexations and what that meant. So there's a whole procedure for annexations that has been included, and we would anticipate adopting this by resolution. Some of the more notable items in the annexation agreement, there's some stuff that's in the annexation policies that are just boilerplate stuff, like has to be contiguous with the city limits. You can't create an island. You can't ignore a disadvantaged community, which we don't have really any of those near us, so that's not an issue. But those are pretty much law as it comes to annexations. Some of the more notable items that are in the annexation agreement, though, that we make sure we want to consider before we would consider an annexation is whether the area requesting annexation is proposed for development. So we wouldn't want to be pulling property in that's zoned residentially just to sit inside city limits. So it has to come, when they come for an annexation, they have to come with a project in mind. One of the other items is whether existing city facilities, services, and infrastructure are adequate to serve the proposed annexation area. Obviously, we'd want to make sure that we have enough utilities and such to serve the needs of the new proposal. As far as all of our utilities, and the city's general plan establishes thresholds for providing these services to existing residents. The proposed annexation, we're saying, shall not result in a reduction of or an inability to serve existing residences. So we don't want to degrade anybody's quality here in town by annexing a piece of property that we really can't serve. One of the other items is whether the proposed annexation is consistent with the general plan policies and all city standards as defined in the Ripon Municipal Code. We do think that projects, as they come to the city, should meet all the city requirements, all our standards, before we even would consider annexing those in. And the last notable item in the annexation policy is whether the proposed annexation would have a neutral or positive fiscal impact on the city. We did talk about this. Residential homes actually end up kind of costing the general plan revenue every year. Obviously, the hope and desire is to bring commercial businesses in that offset that. However, we do see a lot more residential growth than we do see commercial at this point, so we kind of go backwards in that sense. So we would require that new projects do a fiscal impact study to show us what those impacts would be on our general fund, whether we can still maintain public safety services to the new areas. That's also including the police department and fire department on that one as well. So we would make sure that the project can support itself, and if not, what are the ways that you anticipate making sure that we have the revenues to keep our service levels where they should be. So that's kind of the procedures. Those are the more notable items in that. And then I'd be happy to answer any questions if you guys have any on this item.
Mr. Restuccio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I read this a while ago when we first got the package, and I'm looking at my notes that are in our side here. I'm still thinking about whether it should be a percentage or a flat number, but that's kind of, I'm not sure yet. I'm certainly willing to listen to anything, but the things that were important to me were several things. And again, I don't know if this is where it goes or not, but if it's in there, I apologize, but I didn't see anything in there. You made some comment at the end, but in terms of, I don't want to say coordinating, but maybe having some discussion to make sure it works for both the school districts and that it works for the fire department, because they service us, and I don't want to do something that doesn't work for them or impedes on them. And maybe that's part of it. I didn't read it, but I want to make sure that, we take them into consideration too, because we don't want to do something for us that's going to burden them unnecessarily that they can't plan for or whatever. The second thing that I have a note on, and I don't know about Public Works because I never see numbers on that, and I don't know if this is where it goes, but I think we need to be conscious about, and I'm just going to throw some numbers out for discussion purposes. We always talk about the police department having 1.4 cops per 1,000. We used to have 2 per 1,000. I want to make sure that we come to some agreement, only because there's different councils that come along and understand they can change all this stuff later. But let's say everybody, including the police department, says 1.3 is something acceptable. That if we grow and that number gets to 1.25, we've all agreed we're not going to grow anymore without hiring another cop to be at the 1.3. Because I don't want us to deteriorate so far and not keep that in mind, and all of a sudden, our cops are running around and potentially being in their own bad position, being tired, overworked, or whatever the case may be, and not having enough on staff to make sure that not only we protect it, but for their benefit. I don't know if this is where that goes, but I'd like us to kind of think about those numbers and see what they are. And I would say the same thing for Public Works. So you're not overburdened, but I've never seen numbers on Public Works, how many you should have per capita. But I just want to make sure that, we take those into consideration in growth. And, of course, it's all going to have to pay for itself. But I'd like to see some consideration for those.
Just to give you a quick update, you did talk about a percentage or a number, and not sure. We did talk about that a little bit at the last meeting and the presentation. 3%. If you're adding a little bit every year, it doesn't seem like a whole lot at this point. But if you're using 3%, after 10 years, that's 60 more permits. After 20 years, that's 140 more permits. So instead of 160, you're giving 300 out
per year.
Years. Per year.
Yeah.
So it does compound. It takes time. But it does compound.
Mr. Parks?
Thanks, Ken.
Kind of taking Mike's premise, but going in a little bit different direction. So with this growth cap, and as we've sat in, you, myself, Kevin, many, many times with commercial developers, and they tell you rooftops, rooftops, rooftops. That's what, in order to attract businesses, that's what you need. How is this, going to impact the economic development plan that we just put forward? Or are we kind of gearing that plan towards a little bit different of a demographic, somebody that's not necessarily so reliant on the number of rooftops in an area?
I think to answer that kind of twofold, we are kind of looking for economic development opportunities for people who would want to be in a region or more regional serving. So not necessarily dependent on rooftops as much. Because to answer that in a different way is just for a very good example, Prime Shine, car wash, people are always saying, we need a Prime Shine now. We need a Prime Shine in town. I've talked to them several times.
Yeah.
They will not come to Ripon until we hit 30,000 people. Right. We're at 15,000. So if we decided to just cut loose all our development standards, get rid of all our fees, and just grow as fast as we possibly could, if we added 1,000 people a year, which is quite a bit to Ripon, it would still take 15 years of growth before Prime Shine would even be interested in coming to Ripon. So, you'd have to really scrap all your standards to try to grow as fast as you can, just so you can get some interest from those. And I don't necessarily know you guys as a council or the community wants to see that quality of life deteriorating just so we can. So I think we need to focus more on our economic development of opportunities that would be more regional serving or unique businesses that would land in Ripon or local serving than trying to attract, trying to beat Manteca out or Modesto out, because we're never going to win that population.
Right, and I'm glad to hear you say that. I just want to make sure that, all the policy, there's some coherency to them, and to make sure that we're all kind of pushing in the right direction, and we don't have one, we create this, and we're on the road to what I think is a really good policy with economic development, but we're not, kind of cutting out our legs underneath us with a growth cap or something like that. So just to make sure that everything is moving in the same direction. So thank you.
Mr. DeGraff.
I just want to say thanks for the update on this, and again, to basically repeat what Mike had to say, I think it's probably all of our opinion that maintaining services, no matter where our growth goes, is probably a top priority. And as far as economic development goes, I mean, I think you nailed it with what we're trying to do there, and I'm glad you said that, and I think that's where we need to move forward, is finding businesses that want to come to Ripon because we're Ripon. Not we have a perfect example, I think, of what maybe not to do, and that's our next door neighbor, Manteca. So I think we'd all agree we don't want to have the problems that they struggle with. So we're I think on the right track, and glad you're bringing this before us. So thanks,
Mr. Zuber.
How many residential units do we have now?
The last count I have is about 5,350. Now that includes apartments, that includes residential homes, duplexes, triplexes. That's a residential unit, so that's how we classify.
I guess my question is why, I'm not understanding why we're looking at a hard number instead of a percentage. Because at this point, the two numbers are the same. 3% of 5,350 is 160. If you stay with 3%, that would give you about an increase of 5 houses a year. If you built 160 this year, it'd be 165 the next year, and about 170 point something it would accumulate. But if you said that the number you're going to use for your allocation purposes is the existing units the year that this thing is done, in effect you've frozen that number for that particular developer. It doesn't increase. If a guy's coming in and he wants to build 150 houses and there's 20 slots left, he gets 20. The next year, if nobody's wanted any, the most he's going to get is 3% of the year that he started. And it's a little complicated, but in my mind it's pretty simple, because that growth is what creates your cushion as you go through, rather than artificially saying it's going to be 30 houses. I don't see a problem with going with a percentage. My concern about going with a hard number, every few years you're going to have to come back here and say, we need to increase the number, we need to increase the number, we need to increase the number. But if you have a number, a percentage, as your town grows, you've capped how much it can grow, but you're allowing the allocation to grow with the growth in the community. I just don't see a problem with going with a number. The devil's in the details, and I just think there are a lot fewer devils when you deal with a percentage than there are with a hard number.
Just, like I said, just to give an example, so in 2017, if you took 3% of what we had, you have about 165 permits available. By the year 2040, which is what our general plan goes out to, you would be handing out 333 permits. That's 3% growth cap. So,
assuming they all get built.
Right. That's saying you're going to grow at 3% every year. It doesn't always happen that way, and so.
It's all relative. No, I understand, but you know darn well that there will be people coming in to talk to you that if we're growing that fast, they're going to say you can't stay at 160. It's not fair, blah, blah, blah. And so now it comes back to the council and says, 3%, we set this at 3% 5 years ago, and 3% is now this number, and we need to move it up. So now you have another discussion and another discussion, and you're going to get there regardless.
So I did wrestle with that idea a little bit, and we had, for a while there, I had like a 2.5%. We're going to allocate out or 2% or 2.5%, with that 0.5% being your flex. You know, instead of 30 permits, you only allocate out 2.5%, and you keep that 0.5% as your buffer. So if somebody misses their permits in 1 year, because I think hear the council talk about wanting to get away from spike years, you know. And so that 2.5%, and then with the 0.5%, the thing is understand, like at 2040, if you do grow at that, just assuming you're growing at 3% every year, you're handing out 333 permits. That's adding 1,000 people a year to your town, which I think
But that will be a different town than it is now.
But you're still trying to provide. If you're still trying to provide 2 cops for every 1,000, you're having to add a cop or 2 cops every year, which. That's the hard part, is trying to stay with get the economic development to support some of that stuff, or having these people paying into, or having these developments show that they can support it.
I understand that, but in my mind, that's a completely different discussion. Because you said, and we've said this before, residential growth does not pay for itself. So I don't have a problem putting a lid on it, but I don't think the lid should be defined by how many public works people you have and how many police you have. Because if you're going to just rely on residential growth, you're going to get in trouble real fast. That is what's happening next door. They're relying on the one-time expenditures from growth to fund their city. Yep. They've avoided the conversation of, can we afford to keep doing this and keep our level of service? That is a different discussion than how you're, in my mind, than how you're going to put a lid on growth. Because if it gets that point, then this council shouldn't be talking about whether they want to raise a percentage. It should be whether they want to shut it down to 0 to keep this town the way it is.
And a lot of that is part of the annexation policy too.
Right.
Typically, we annex as we grow and annex with projects. You're not bringing a lot in and then having these discussions. So a lot of those discussion of services are going to be part of the annexation policy and talking about the financial part of the annexation.
Because really, if you want to mix services with growth, you better put that number or percentage at 0. Because that in and of itself will not pay for itself. You're only digging a hole. I mean, that discussion should say we will not have residential growth until we can show a certain percentage of commercial development to sustain it. I mean, that's what the discussion ought to be. So back to my original point, I don't think there's that big of a deal between a percentage and a number, other than the percentage can take care of itself. That number, you know darn well, if we start getting residential growth, we're going to have somebody in here every year saying, well, that number is ridiculous, you're out of touch, blah, blah, blah. I'd rather avoid putting you guys in that position, that's all.
My only thought on that would be is if you got a set number, say whatever it might be, 160, I guess is what you put down. If you had a 160, then that would be 160. If you had, say, 3%, could you go 3.2%? Would that still be considered 3%?
3.2. No, you just said 3.0.
Well, off the, you're talking
So,
about off the original
I mean, I
base.
personally really don't care. I think everybody's made a legitimate point. I'm going to guess that you've got a pretty good direction where to go.
No.
Let me put a blindfold on and throw a dart at a wall. I mean, I can bring something back. I can bring 2 options back for that. You guys can vote on it at the next meeting. So, I mean, I guess I am kind of hearing either the 160 or 3% is your comfort level on the high side. So whether it's a percentage or a hard number, that's kind of your comfort level. We do want to build some flexibility in that, or be able to carry some over, because if somebody does, projects do tend to slip here and there, and they kind of miss their allocation sometimes, and So instead of being able just to pile them on the next year and all of a sudden we're growing at 5 and 6% in 1 year, we don't really want to get into that aspect. So we'll have some sort of buffer in there that we can carry it over, and we'll bring back a couple options.
How many houses are we have set for this year?
It's not this year you have to worry about, it's next year.
Well, I don't think they'll get built in 1 year. However, you've got 133 homes starting out by Midland Sports Park one of these days. You saw them clear the orchard out there. You've got 29 homes being built over by Ripon School. You've got 19 homes being built at the end of Vera and Doak Boulevard. You've got 110 apartments being built on North Ripon Road.
And you would include those in that total?
Those are all, yeah, and the reason we do that is because services, as far as from a police and fire standpoint, and even public works, I mean, a residential unit's a residential unit. You're still, fire department, police department, still responding to an apartment like they would a residential house. So we look at those that way.
That adds up, if my math is correct, 291.
And we do have two
a little bit over
applications.
the
Two
160.
more, there's another 200 coming in.
And we do have two applications pending right now that have, one's got 88 homes and the other one's got 106.
You guys are hitting me up and going for a second shot, Mike?
I just want to say, it isn't like, where are you going to plant your tree when you get it in the yard? These are discussions we need to have, and we're talking about them, and it's not simple. Not everybody has the right answer, so I'm glad we're talking about kicking ideas around so we can listen to each other and maybe what our thoughts were change a little bit after listening to other people. So I'm glad we're having this discussion. I think it's been good for me to listen to.
Mr. Zuber?
Relative to the handling of unused allocation, I know at one point, back when things were going like gangbusters around here, the idea was, or not the idea, the requirement was you either build them when they're allocated or you go to the end of the line. And personally, I prefer that. I would rather have the pressure on the city and the developer at the time this is being discussed to be realistic about what they're going to do, rather than being unrealistic. We give them an allocation, and then we spend the next 2 or 3 years trying to figure out how to fit them in there. The idea is we need to be close, because if you've got a 5-year agreement, you're going to build the unbuilt ones 5 years from now, not next year.
And that probably was a little bit before my time here, because I think I remember at least working with Ernie on this and stuff, is if they got allocated the permits and they didn't use them 1 year, they were able to build them all the second year if they wanted. So they didn't have to go. They didn't have to go to the end of the line. They could carry over. If they got 100 permits this year and they had 100 permits next year, they could build 200 in that year.
They did for a while, and then that's when the spiking started. It just got totally ridiculous, and so they stopped that and said no. I remember sitting here in meetings for the school district, and Ernie had a chart that was, I think it was on an 11 by 7 or 8.5 by 14 sheet of paper sideways, showing how all of these developments and how their houses were allocated, and they would go out like 5, 6, some of them 7 or 8 years, in order to keep a lid on things.
Well, and it also prevents market manipulation too.
Mm-hmm. I was on the council.
Yeah.
Well, we did that.
It did change.
10 years ago.
Could have been.
Because me and Mike was on the council, and that's when I started. We had this discussion back then, and I thought we cleared it up pretty well at that point in time. But it's good that it's coming back to talk about, because it's obvious that we've got a lot of interest in people wanting to come to Ripon and build houses. So I think it's a good point, and with that, you're good to go.
Yeah, so I'll bring back, it'll include 2 items here, actually. So I'll bring back, next meeting, I'll bring back something with the annexation policy, because that is we'd be adopting that by resolution. And we'll get something kicked off. The other one's going to require a general plan amendment, which that takes a little bit of time, 90 days to get through. So we'll start that process, and I'll bring back the language so you can choose what you want to do, whether it's a hard cap or a percentage, and give a couple options there for council.
Sounds good.
Okay. I've noticed the young lady walked in. Are you from the women's shelter? Because we've got a proclamation for you. Since I'm going to guess that you thought the meeting started at 7. No? Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I'll go ahead and do that now. Could I have I'm sorry, what's your name? Okay, sexual assault is an intolerable violent crime with public health implications for every person in the city of Ripon as a victim, survivor, or as a family member, significant other, neighbor, or co-worker of the victim survivor. No one person, organization, agency, or community can eliminate sexual assault of their own. We must together to educate an entire population about what can be done to prevent sexual assault. The Women's Center Youth and Family Services has led the way to the city of Ripon in addressing sexual assault by providing 24-hour helpline services to victims, survivors, and their significant others, responding to emergency calls, offering support and comfort to those impacted by sexual assault during medical exams, criminal proceedings, and empowering those impacted by sexual assault to chart their own course for healing. Staff and volunteers of sexual assault programs in the city of Ripon work year-round to encourage every person in the city of Ripon to end sexual violence and to support survivors. The Women's Center Youth and Family Service requests community support and assistance to continue its efforts to bring real hope, eliminating the tragedy of sexual violence in the city of Ripon. In recognition of their efforts, this proclamation declares the month of April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
I'm honored to accept this proclamation. Sexual violence crosses all racial, cultural, age, and gender, and economical boundaries. It is estimated that 1 in 6 women, 1 in 4 girls, 1 in 7 boys, and 1 in 33 men will be sexually assaulted in their lives. Each victim represents a mother, a daughter, a sister, a son, a nephew, a best friend, a co-worker, a neighbor. It is time to stand collectively. It's time to get involved. It's time to make a difference, and it's time to talk about it. If you would like to learn more or join us on Wednesday, April 26th for Denim Day, a day for people to come together by wearing denim as a visible sign of protest against sexual violence. Visit our website at www.womencenteryfs.org. Thank you very much.
I've noticed that our illustrious fire chief has showed up. We had an emergency, I'm sure, where he's late. Does anybody have any questions for Dennis, since we've already passed what he's requesting? Seeing nobody. Do you want to say something, Dennis? Okay, thank you. It's okay. Canal Street after the meeting.
He's not just a councilman, he has a real job.
Okay, with that, we will, department heads, Mr. Ted.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple items, actually good news in nature. In March last month, we reduced our water consumption from 2013 by 58.8%. Jeez. So, wow. Yeah. It keeps surprising me, the numbers as they go up. That brings our running 12-month total to running average to 34%. The other good news is the governor has lifted the emergency drought regulations. He has retained, however, the prohibition of wasteful water practices, and that includes washing down sidewalks, watering during and after rainfall, and irrigation of ornamental turf on public street medians. So it's kind of good news that finally made that decision. They are, sounds like they are in the works of making some regulations to make conservation a way of life in California. So I think we're probably going to be seeing some of these things written in to continue conservation measures. The other thing, next month we will, at the meeting, we'll be bringing, staff will be bringing to the council a update on our groundwater status.
On our what?
Groundwater elevation status.
Thank you. Moving on, James.
I think I said enough.
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to update the council. As most of you are aware, we met with the downtown businesses regarding the Stockton Avenue parking lot project. Their main concern during construction was the elimination of the parking stalls. So we've reached out to the property owners on the corner of 2nd and Stockton Avenue, our former site that we own. They've verbally agreed to let us use that lot during construction for parking to kind of supplement during the project. So staff is working on drafting up an agreement to release them of any liability throughout that project. And then we're looking to advertise and bid in May, and then hopefully award in June, and then start shortly after that. So, and then also, most of you are well as well, is the CMAQ application that we applied for a grant to install a traffic signal at Hoff and Colony was approved. So it's a $660,000 grant to install a signal there. $400,000 of that is from the CMAQ grant, and the other $260,000 is coming from our transportation fund. So,
Thank you, James. City Attorney? City Administrator?
Nothing to report.
Mr. Parks?
Nothing to report.
Mr. Zuber?
I have nothing to report, but I have a question somewhere.
This is not a question and answer time. We'll be moving on.
You don't have to answer it. Mr. Johnston took care of one of my questions. Where is it? Your water thing, that's going to be on the wells, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I don't remember what the other thing was, so I'll pass.
Mr. DeGraff?
Nothing to report other than, as usual, thank you to the members of the community for being here tonight.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, the little thing I want to say is we had our first responder appreciation day. I know a lot of you couldn't make it, and we understand that, but we had well over 300 people, and we're looking forward to probably even a much better event next year. So thank you all for coming and supporting our first responders.
With that, we'll end the meeting. Thank you.
So now we got to close. Just close?
Don't ever
Just close.
Oh, do we?
I will say
We have to finish up?
And then do we?
You know what? Hey, it's not like I
bottom
show
right?
up every day in shorts and,
What'd you do?
fake it down.
No, but I know